Follow that, as they say. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the kind invitation to speak here today. I bring you solidarity and friendship from all the train drivers across the UK. It seems to spend an awful lot of time with Steve and Mark because their values shine through and we share a lot in common, which means we spend a lot of time and a lot of late hours on the same platforms arguing for the same things, whether we're in the Labour Party or not. But I'd like to take a brief moment, if I could, to pay my respects and our respects to Joe Simpson, who's a great friend to ASLEF, a colleague, a trade unionist. I had the privilege of working with Joe for many years and going on human rights missions with him. His passion for people and natural humanity always shone through, and he will be missed. I'd also like to take this opportunity to congratulate another friend, Mick on his new role and wish him all the best for the future. But I've been stunned and can't be stunned. I know we hear the stories about what you go through every day, but the recent incidents, both at Frankland and Loudon Grange, right, our sympathies to all those impacted by it and their families, because what we do as workers impacts upon our families too. But also our respect to all those of you who deal with the numerous occasions of violence and other issues that we can't understand outside your sector, right? And despite the warnings and interventions by the POA to try and change both this government and previous government's view of the world. I've been looking at the report from the Public Accounts Committee, and it's time that those findings are acted upon. You've got to deal with overcrowding. You have to deal with fire safety. You have to deal with proper funding. £520 million is not enough. I do think the 2.8 million is probably an underestimate in the Victorian prisons that we have in many places. The issues around drugs, drones, mental health, both of the officers and the prisoners, self-harm, understaffing, and most frighteningly of all, in a very physical role and a very stressful role, being expected to work to the age of 70. I expect all of these things are very high on your agenda this week. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I won't tell you about prisons, you don't tell me about trains. Can I also take this opportunity to thank Steve and Mark and yourselves, because we saw it everywhere across the UK when we ended up in the longest rail strike in history. So many people came and stood on our picket lines, so many people offered us voice and support, and so many people stood with us at a time, because we were the last union standing, we thought that wasn't going to happen, which was a very political strike. So I can't thank you enough. And that made me think, you know, Steve and I go back a long way, and there was one time, the worst thing that we thought could happen to us was grayling. Seriously, Steve and I, he'd been 3 years, we destroyed, you know, been Minister of Justice and destroyed you lot and the probation service. And then he came to the railways. And we ended up in a dispute. And the first time I went to meet him, it didn't go very well. Lots of silences, lots of ums and ahs and whatever. The second meeting, he'd also got one of his people to do a bit of research. So he said, Michael, only my mum calls me Michael. Michael, I understand that you're the chair of Justice for Columbia. And I said, yes, Minister. Well, he said, you might not know this, Michael, but when I was at Cambridge, I was chair of Amnesty. I said, really, Minister? Is that what gave you the idea to bang people up for 23 hours a day without any books? And it sort of went downhill from there. Down the years, I've been proud to speak at many POA meetings and rallies on the right to strike and the equitable right age and the associated page. And I've seconded your motions at TUC. Because I do believe that every worker should have the same rights, should have the same voice, the same opportunity, same ability to protect themselves under health and safety and other legislation. And if something's unfair for one group of workers, it's inherently unfair for another group of workers. So we've done that many, many times. So at this point, I suppose I have to apologise. Because now Mark's dropped me in it. I am the chair of TULO, the trade union labour organisation, affiliated unions to the Labour Party. And we're running round talking about our new deal for workers. It is a good deal. Undoing decades and decades and decades of anti-worker legislation, from Thatcher to the 2016 Act, from the Lobbying Act to the Transparency Act to the Protest Bill, has to be done. But we did in real terms set ourselves a really unreliable timeline, that to make them do it, because we understood what happened when Blair and Brown were there, they promised us change and didn't give it. over 3 Labour governments that they had to do this within 100 days. The whole width and breadth of this was quite stunning. So there will be 250 changes if we get them through the Lords, if we get them past the Tory amendments, that will change all workers' lives on a daily basis. But we failed. Despite the hard work done by your top table, beside the hard work of the trade unions in convincing people immediately to give the right strike back to everybody else, I'll apologise today, and I'll apologise every day in the future until you have the same rights as we do, because it is wrong. So as we do this, we still know that even when you have the right to strike, and I so admire the bravery of your leadership on occasions, and I'm not sure if Thompson's in the room because we share the same lawyers, but I hear the stories behind the scenes of how all of a sudden, when you rightfully go out and strike or withdraw your labour because of health and safety reasons, the top table go missing and won't run away and won't hide, but won't let them drag you into court to undermine what you, the workers, are doing. So I do admire trade unions that creatively avoid things, but even when you have the right to strike, look at my trade union's history. Under Grayling and subsequently, I spent 18 months in the High Court being injuncted. Even when you have the right to strike, even when you jump through their hoops, even when you do their ballots, even when you do their cooling off periods, they will still try and find another reason to get you into court, and we need to change that too. That's got to stop. I suppose, like all of you, like all trade unions, all civil society organisations, we're looking back at the last 4 or 5 years. And, there was lots of things we failed to do. All our campaigning naturally stopped during the period of COVID. All the campaigns we wanted to run, the things that we're doing mutually, the things we're doing singly, and otherwise. So I imagine part of your conference this week will be reinvigorating even, I'll try that again, many of the things that you want to do and where you want to be, and putting that impetus back into them. But also thinking about that time of COVID. We thought about it a lot. There was just one short period of time where all work had dignity. It didn't matter what you did. Everybody was virtually a key worker. Those who put the food on the shelves, those who got the people around the country, those who trapped themselves in with other people and looked after them during a dangerous time and put themselves more at risk than others than you did. But that period of dignity didn't last long. I don't think any of us expected the same level of approbation as the NHS or the social care service. But we did come out of COVID with an expectation that understanding there was a dignity to all work, that it would be rewarded. And that dignity could hopefully go into retirement and take us where we needed to be. And what we saw was a series of Tory prime ministers reverting back to type, cutting, changing, and hurting workers everywhere. And all the words they said before turned out to be lies while they partied and did what they sought to do. But also then forgot, because after the 2 years of COVID, what we then actually had was virtually 2 years of every sector, private and public, out on strike. And even those that weren't on strike were supporting those that were on strike, because in every household in the country, there wasn't a family not affected by the policies of that Tory government. There wasn't a family not affected who didn't have somebody out on strike who was a teacher, a civil servant, a train driver, a bin lorry driver, or somebody else. And they didn't understand that we were all standing on the same platforms, shouting for that solidarity and unity, because we believed that every victory of every trade union across the movement was a victory for everybody. And that's what we found. People came and supported us across the board, but we had a government that didn't understand. And I think 4 or 5 prime ministers in a short period of time, looking after their mates and doing what they did, right, found them out. One-trick ponies and immigration as reformer. The reality of this country is we need investment. We need to invest in our people. We need to invest in training. We need to invest in infrastructure. We need to invest in future generations. And we need to invest in the communities which we live and grow up in. And that's where we need to be. And we need to understand, where did that £38 billion of track and trace money go? Where did the money to VIP lanes go? Where did the highest taxing government of all time do with our money. Because over that 14 years of austerity, we saw council budgets cut by 30–60%. We saw the prison service budgets and justice cut by massive amounts. We saw every sector being cut. What I saw in my industry was loads of privateers and transnationals taking hundreds of millions of pounds out of my industry, while only barely doing what they had to do. People making more money during COVID for not running trains than running the trains they were paid to do so. People making more money out of a 2-year rail strike when the strike days than on the days when we actually ran trains. There's got to be something wrong with that. There's got to be something wrong in a model that allows that to happen. So, we ended up with the highest borrowing government of all time, highest taxing government of all time. And when I say the highest borrowing government of all time, don't believe this thing about the Tories being good with the economy. 14 years of austerity. Where did the money go? 14 years of cuts. Where did the money go? Because they're not just the highest borrowing government of all time. They're the highest borrowing government if you had every government in history together and took off the bill for COVID off the end. So we need to ask ourselves, what have we done as a country? Where do we need to be? But also, I will say this to the Labour Party. We did not elect you for more of the same. We do not agree with your stance on the winter fuel allowance. We do not agree what you're doing on PIP. We do not agree what you're doing on cuts to services. And I was proud to stand in Birmingham with the bin workers the other day when they want to take £8,000 a year off a person who drives a bin lorry. Don't put the pain on the workers. Put it where it should be. Put it on the Googles. Put it on the Amazons. Put it on the transnationals. Make the people who don't pay tax pay tax. Don't take it out of the people who pay the tax and national insurance. Give them the disposable income that will drive their local economy, that will drive their national economy, that will allow people to have a dignity in what they do. And then, hopefully, we'll be in a better place. Now, I do agree, having inherited the proverbial bag of crap, they're probably not going to listen to me today. But I do believe that they will listen to the voice of the trade union movement. I do believe they will listen to civil society. And I do believe if we all say on the things that they're wrong, they will have to change their view of the world. So I believe it's quite simple. Now's the time for all trade unions to demand investment across all sectors. Decent pay, dignity into retirement, a real future for our children and grandchildren. I think unions standing together are key to that future. So I'm proud to be here with you today. I look forward to being back with you in the future. So your battles are ours, your wins are ours, and when we stand as a movement, I don't think we can be shaken. Thank you for listening.